Good.
Hi, Carl.
How are you, Terry?
Hey, so did you see that there was a new wood duck box at Catamount?
No, I haven't been up there for a while.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen it either, but Reed from the, that's on the Catamount Community Forest Committee, he and his brother-in-law put together built a new wood duck box and installed it about a month ago
Where'd they put it?
at the pond on the south side.
Uh-huh.
So they
Replace the old one?
They did. There's 2 or 3 that are, I think there are actually 3 on that pond, and they're going to put 2, and then they're going to put 1 on each pond over on the other side.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So, and they're going to use one of the old boxes as kind of an educational piece, you know, to display it and talk about wood ducks and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was pretty.
Now, who was this? Who was it that did it?
Reed, what's his last name, Melinda?
Parker.
Reed Parker. He is actually, his wife did the nest box watch over there for the bluebirds.
Well, that is great.
Yeah, I was pretty excited. He just out of the blue said, hey, whose wood duck boxes are those?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if wood ducks will use it.
Yeah, yep. So pretty nice one. So
Great.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
good morning.
Thank Laura.
Good morning.
When Reed gets on, if she gets on, congratulations to her for being the new board member for the Williston Park District.
Oh, she's here
Oh,
and she's waving.
awesome.
She's wearing the best color.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Reed.
Thank you.
Laura, you're muted.
Thank you. Let's call this meeting to order. Any public comment this morning? All right, if not, let's look at the minutes of December 15th.
That's a very comprehensive report on the trapping discussion.
Gary, thank you for setting Walter Pullman up already. any comments on the minutes?
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Carl. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone who wasn't here at the last meeting? All right, thank you. The minutes have been approved.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I just read them and said aye anyway. I don't know why. So you can strike my vote.
Okay, thanks, Kim. You probably can say aye.
I think you can.
Yeah.
But it's your choice whether you want to abstain or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll look again at the draft policy for trapping on lands. Is Peggy here today?
Mhm. She's muted though.
All right, Peggy, you're muted.
Mm.
Okay, if you could show that, Melinda. Melinda and I looked at this and we decided to, we did change it to strike the language that was speculative. So if you could take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm just not, can you let me in again?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
we
I
can
can't
see
see you at this point. I'm still waiting to be,
Okay, you're in the meeting, so I mean, we can
yeah,
hear you.
I just
we can
can't see you.
I
Um,
wonder, do you have maybe a document up over Zoom? Like if you click the Zoom icon on the bottom of your computer screen, does everything pop up?
Let's see. No, I'm just not getting anything here. Let me check in again and maybe you guys can let me in again.
Yep.
So Melinda, this is different than what I had printed out from the minutes. That's interesting. So,
Yeah, what you printed out was the original and we changed it after the discussion in December.
Oh, is
uh-huh.
this right? I was just wondering the same thing, Terry. This what's
Yeah.
on the screen is different than what's in the link that I just clicked on a minute ago.
Right.
Oh,
so,
okay, never mind. No, the
let's
link
see.
is bad. The link is to the old
Oh.
one. I apologize.
Okay, guys, I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, so you did take out the wording about the trapping is inhumane and indiscriminate. But then, so
Correct.
that's what you took out.
Yeah.
Correct. And I also put in, let's see, I think this is different than the last time,
Okay,
putting in language defining fur bearer and,
mhm.
So this is the first time that we're all seeing this.
yes.
Okay,
And then also putting in some language around research and animal welfare standards. Yeah, may permit trapping on town land for the purposes of research or monitoring by governmental agency or academic institution, provided that accepted practice of animal welfare are followed.
and
Is this
that,
the version that you had in the agenda?
no,
No,
Not the emailed agenda.
So everybody, the emailed agenda, the link in there is taking you to the old version. This is the revised version. My apologies about that.
If you go to the website and open it from there, the link is correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, but this is, I mean, really the main thing that was changed was the sentence about trapping being inhumane and indiscriminate, and 2/3 are non-target species was taken out.
Okay, let's just leave it here for a minute so we can take a
Mhm.
look.
yeah,
Us slow readers can take a look at that.
no worries.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please go ahead, Peggy.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't want to interrupt you or anything like that, but I think it's kind of, I've been reading a lot about this lately, about the number of animals that are trapped that are not the target animal. And it's astounding. I mean, I've always used the conservative 2 out of 3 are not the target animals, but my goodness, it's closer to 10 out of 15. And I'm just wondering if, the non-target animals here need some protection, especially, if you have an endangered species or something. I just read in the Front Porch Forum that people have seen some eagles over Williston now. And I know that in other states that eagles have been trapped. So yeah, we all know it's inhumane. I mean, you don't have to be a veterinarian to know that, but I think maybe we should be a little bit more careful about the non-target animals, because it's actually quite astounding if you read the literature.
Yeah, Peggy, I read that article you sent about the wildlife ecologist who studied mountain lions, et cetera. And yeah, that was very informative. I think with this, I mean, we mainly want to say no trapping on town lands. And so I'm not sure if putting in that information in here, though others can disagree with me, will further that point.
Well, I understand where you're coming from with this, but I also think that it's it's important to realize that so many of the animals that are trapped are not the target animals, and I'd like to somewhere see that addressed. I do think it's important.
If I may suggest something, Laura.
Yes.
One thing to consider is that this policy, if it's not going to be in this policy, Peggy, another way to have it in the record is when this policy comes before, draft policy comes before the select board for adoption, that would be a time where, that aspect could be voiced and would be reflected in the record for the meeting at which they reviewed the policy.
And it'll also, of course, I'll reflect your statements in the minutes of this meeting as well.
Yeah, if somebody went back to look how we got this policy, they would see that.
I would also just point out that whether the language about non-target species is in or out, it doesn't change the policy itself. And so I think the integrity of the policy is going to protect those species either way.
So
Eric-
I just
Go
dropped
ahead.
something into the chat, and for some reason I can only send it to Melinda. I don't know why.
Oh, I think in general, we've disabled chat between,
have you?
to
Okay.
everybody. I don't know how to re-enable it, but anyway,
Okay.
so Eric's suggesting to have a statement that says this policy has been drafted in response to citizen concerns regarding animal welfare, public safety, and potential impacts to non-target species, including domesticated animals and rare, threatened, or endangered wildlife.
Okay.
I love that statement, Eric, and that if we're going to include something, I think having it be general and straightforward like that gives it the ability to last,
Yes.
rather than citing specific things. It tells you why this policy was drafted, and then it moves on to what the policy does.
It's also the right place to put it,
Mhm.
right at the beginning.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yeah, and if when this policy is looked at in the future, people will maybe think twice before changing it if that sentence is in there.
I think that's a good idea. I think somewhere it should be stated that these non-target animals are a pretty large number of them. I think that's good. I think at least then there is some something that if the public reads it, they can understand it.
Thank you, Peggy.
Yeah, thank you.
I I don't remember changes to the other parts of this policy, but we can give it a look through real quickly here.
I have a question on right there on B, on the, if you scroll down underneath 3B. Yeah, right there. And then it has the second bullet says use preventative measures where feasible. And I would kind of like to see some kind of language in there that would indicate that the first line of defense would be trying to use the flow control devices, the beaver deceiver, and, just to state that, trapping is not going to be the first tool that the town is going to go use. There is funding through the state and through Protect Our Wildlife. So I'm just wondering if somewhere there can be that would be a first choice.
So, so Terry, you don't see that this number 2 under here as being,
I see that, but it's
What if-
the first bullet is about trapping.
Yeah, what if it said that non-lethal measures must be attempted prior to justifying trapping or something like that? That something has to be tried that's
Well,
non-lethal.
I think the issue with that is that sometimes when these issues are discovered, they're an emergency right away. And we don't have the time to look for somebody to install beaver baffle. And, it's one thing if it's a trail, and we did the last time we had trail issues, we definitely took the time to consult with Fish and Wildlife and install a baffle, and then we installed another baffle. But if Public Works sees a culvert that is flooding and a road that's flooding because of beaver issues, and sometimes these things can literally crop up overnight,
Yeah, they can.
and they don't have any other choice, then, I think that, I don't think they will accept a policy that that basically ties their hands when, with regard to like protecting town maintained infrastructure. That's my, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I agree with all those points, and I'm wondering if maybe it's just something as simple as reordering what we have on in the policy now. So, we lead with planning, planning with, yes, and that's that second bullet. We lead with planning during construction phase. This beavers, there's the new bridges or whatever should be engineered with beavers in mind, but also just with looking forward to increasing rainfall in our area and all that. So they should be constructed anyway to accommodate increased flows, which could also include beaver impacts. And then second, avoid trail crossings in areas that can be encountered by beavers. Third would be installation of exclusion devices, and then fourth would be installation of caging, etc. All those elements are still in there, but they're just supposed to be emphasis on avoidance first, avoiding conflicts first.
Yeah, avoid and non-lethal measures, and then here's everything else.
And I'm just worried that it would be very easy to look at this 10 years down the road and say, oh, well, here they have trapping right here, so let's just trap. And just say, oh, the other, and I guess, and then here we go into, thinking about, the trapping issue and all that, but, the beavers are here. And, if you take out some beavers, there'll be more to come back. It's just like coyotes. Once you kill a coyote, there's more that are, you're just taking that one coyote out of the ecosystem. There's more that's going to come back. So I think trying to use measures with trying to coexist with the beavers as opposed to just keep trapping and getting rid of them, because they have 1 to 4 kits a year. And after 2 years, those kits have to get moved on. So you're always going to have a beaver population.
Yeah, and I don't think the goal has ever been to eradicate the population.
Right.
It's just to manage the population, and for exactly those reasons that you're saying, is
Yeah.
that, you know,
They're-
they are here, they are reproducing. And even, you know, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, when they installed the beaver baffles that we had put up, you know, after we had installed one, and then we ended up, you know, the beavers installed a dam below that baffle. So we had to install a second baffle 300 feet down the trail. And at that point, Fish and Wildlife Department said, you know, you got to do something to manage this population. You can't, you know, there's only so many baffles you can put in. And, you know, right now you've severely altered the hydrology of this wetland. And, you know, the baffle cannot be a single solution. You have to also manage the population.
Okay, good. I'm okay with, you know, at least moving that second bullet up to the first, just to kind of indicate that that would be, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully the first.
And those other ones, the monitoring program, where's the one? Oh yeah, this one, the preventative measures first,
Mhm.
the monitoring program, and then yeah, and then finally the trapping at the end.
Okay.
The lethal measure.
And also, I'm just wondering if somewhere in there, I know they're saying to contact, you know, the warden and things. Should the town manager be notified too? Because sometimes when I've tried to get a hold of a warden, it's not that easy. It's not that quick.
Yeah, well, I think because this is a town policy, the understanding is the town manager is gonna know, you know, this is a policy that's enacted by a select board. Yes, you know, we would of course inform the town leaders if an issue is happening.
Is it safe to say the select board is accountable? The warden is responsible for taking action, so.
Yeah, it's not really the warden. Well, is it? No, it's not the warden. It's yeah, that's right. Fish and Wildlife warden. Okay. And
Yeah,
our
the warden's
biologist.
responsible for responding, but they're not accountable for the policy. The policy is, the select board
Yeah.
is accountable for the policy, and the town manager is the select board's agent. So
Yeah.
I think we're good on that front.
Yeah.
I just have a question, Melinda. I've heard some people who work on trails talk about dismantling part of the dam, Beaver Dam. I mean, that probably only works very temporarily, correct?
It doesn't, it's useless to try to do that. I've tried to do that myself, and it's a futile exercise.
The beavers have more hours in the day than we do.
Yeah, you know, like I'll try to breach a dam. You know, I tried to breach a dam and then the next morning it's been rebuilt. So it's not a useful practice at all.
Okay.
And that's
Thank you.
where I feel these beaver deceivers, or whatever you want to call them, you know, they help maintain that level. But the beavers don't, you know, like Melinda, yes, you did say the beavers went down the way, but
Right.
you know, it does help them, you know, not just act, you know, trying to build you know, further increase that dam, you know, so that they do work.
To a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah, I would say that we had some success with that, with that system of baffles. We definitely did have success. However, as the person who attended last time, Jay Petrillo, said, the beavers moved downstream to the old stage estates. And we may, you know, it may have solved our problem, but then it just gave them a problem. You know, so I tend to, you know, be of the mindset, yeah, we can absolutely employ non-lethal methods where possible, but that there is a need to manage a population, and, you know, the only means to do that is through trapping. Because beavers, they don't have natural predators now. is because, humans have extirpated a lot of it.
I think it was only wolves, right? Wolves were one of the only. Am I
perhaps.
correct about that?
I mean, they also lack natural predators just because of their, because they exist mainly in the water. So that's been a protective mechanism for them.
Okay, but I think this covers both. It covers the, using both methods, many methods, and to protect the town-owned lands for people recreating. And
Yep.
for pets, yeah.
Mhm.
And down the bottom, you're just going to post at each one of the second bulleted town lands, just posting that about trapping.
Yeah, and I think, perhaps we can talk at another meeting about the language for that. We may also want to include some other language, some other more general language about what's, sort of general policies about these lands. So we can talk about that at some future date. And also, I believe there's language further up here. Yeah, okay. About if there is trapping done on town land to control beavers or another species, that the trapper has to notify the public of trapping activity, has to put up signage with, that's dated and saying that there are traps and the duration of trapping, expected duration of trapping, and has to notify the town of the exact location of the trap.
Would he have to notify the town if let's say he trapped a cat, a kitty cat or a puppy? Would he have to notify the town if he didn't, if whatever animal was in the trap was not the target animal? Would he have to notify the town about that?
Well, that's a good point. And I think adding a bullet stating that the trapper must notify the town
Of any non-target.
Of any non-target captures.
Non-target species, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well,
Great
thank you.
idea, Peggy, thanks.
All right.
Are you looking today for a motion to submit this draft policy to the select board, or do you want us to thinking we're going to want to take another look at it?
If you all are ready to approve it, you can make a motion. If you think you want to look at it again, it's up to you.
We still have some time, so if there's something else you need to think about, we have 15 minutes. But I think the changes we've made are pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm prepared to make a motion to submit the select board as amended if there's no further comments at this point.
Okay, thank you, Reed. Do I hear a second on Reed's motion?
Second it. I'm good with it as written or as amended.
Okay, any further discussion?
Melinda, when you add the amendments, could you post the thing as we finally approve it, or send it around as we finally approve it?
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor of approving the policy as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Does anyone abstain? Okay, thank you. The motion to approve the policy as amended has passed. Okay,
Thanks for all the great writing, Melinda.
yeah, Melinda,
Sure.
thank you for all that work on that policy.
No
It was really
problem.
forward, yeah. And we have an application at French Hill Manor, but we have, is the person who is going to present that here?
No, not yet. So do you want to skip and go to the next thing for now, or?
Let's go to staff report, since that might be a little shorter instead of getting immersed in draft language.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not, it's on the agenda for 7:45, but I'm honestly not sure if he may show up at 8, but anyway, we'll just, we'll adjust as needed, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So just wanted to let you all know that last night, the Planning Commission voted to warn a public hearing for the form-based code for Taft Corners, which is a big deal. There are still issues in the code that need to be worked through, but it's going to go to public hearing, and those issues can still be worked through, and language can be changed as it goes through the public hearing process. Along with that, we are going to also move the official map through the public hearing process, and that's a long time coming. The only recent change that we've made to the official map has been the incorporation of the form-based code regulating plan into the official map. So basically, within the form-based code district, the official map is essentially the same as the regulating plan, which means it'll contain all those grid streets. And I guess what might be helpful is if I were to show you what that is. So let's see. I will quickly show you. So the regulating plan map. So let's zoom out a little bit. Yeah, so this is currently the regulating plan, and these are all of the proposed grid streets in Taft Corners. The orange and the yellow are existing streets, and the orange, shades of orange, with the exception of this here, are proposed street layout and block layout. These little lines going in between are proposed locations for alleyways, private alleys. And with the idea is that the Taft Corners becomes populated by these very smallish blocks, and buildings are pulled up to the street. So these lines right here, these blue lines that you see, are the required building lines. So the buildings are much closer to the street than they are now. Also within the form-based code are, and most relevant to this commission, are planned green spaces and parks, which are the areas that you see in green here, parks and natural areas. So the light green areas are like civic greens or green spaces or parks, and the large greener areas are more of like natural areas. This one being within Harvest Lane, Marshall Ave, with a proposed name of Harvest Park. And then all of these areas are areas that have wetlands in them. And this area over here is the Burr Oak Knoll area. So, maybe that'll become the Burr Oak Park. And then this is an area with a lot of wetlands here. And then this area up here is where the Essex Alliance property is right now. This is a proposed natural area here as well. So anyway, so that's kind of where that stands. And I encourage you to come to the public hearings and participate as you can. And if you'd like to ask any questions of me right now, feel free to do that.
Melinda, can you pull up the official map that contains other elements like
Sure.
town public facilities and stuff?
Oops, where are we? Okay. Do you want to zoom in on Taft Corners?
At first, I was just trying to remind myself all of the elements that had been mapped, but the Taft Corners area is obviously the most active.
Yeah, there's so some of the things, just going up to the legends, we looked at existing infrastructure, including all the trail easements that the town has. We looked at locations of proposed bike and pedestrian bridges, proposed crosswalks, proposed bike lanes, multi-use paths and sidewalks. And this shows the street and block layout in Taft Corners. And then, so tier 1 and tier 2, essentially what that means is tier 1 proposed facilities are facilities that have had scoping studies done. So they are sort of more ready to go than tier 2 facilities, which have not had any scoping done yet, but were indicated as being desired facilities. So there's, in the tier 2, you'll see locations for proposed bike storage lockers, parking areas, and a transit station. And the transit station is right there. So it's right on a small piece of town-owned property, right near.
By the pond,
to,
right?
By the pond, yes.
Near
Right.
Shaw's and
Between
Fenway.
Shaw's and the pond.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and by transit station, I'm not talking about something like what you see in downtown Burlington, their new transit station and a bus stop area. I'm not talking about that. And it's more of a glorified bus shelter with, maybe with restroom facilities, like a covered bus shelter. And also what's envisioned for that is, with small parking area, park and ride area, and a bike locker there as well. But like I said, that has not been scoped out at all. So, and then we have, let's see, natural areas and developed parks or greens. We didn't really scope out any desired natural areas in the rest of town, because that was sort of outside the scope of the project. However, that was done within the Taft Corners because there is a real lack of green space there. So.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
I know we could talk about that topic for like a week. So
yeah,
that was all I wanted to see.
I'm
Thank
sure
you.
I'm sure we could. Any other thoughts or questions?
Melinda, did you say when they were going to start the town meetings, the public?
So the first one will be I believe it's February 1st, which is about a month from now. And yeah, so that'll be the first planning commission public hearing. And, you know, there may be just one public hearing for planning commission, or there may be more. Just sort
And
of all
this would be the
depends.
planning commission presenting, or Jeff Farrell, or combination?
Combination, I mean, it'll probably be primarily Jeff Farrell and and probably Taylor Newton will be there from the Chittenden Regional Planning Commission. But yeah, I imagine it will probably be Jeff Farrell and his team presenting. Okay, so let's see if there are no other questions about that. One thing that's not on here in the staff report is that, oh, okay. I see that the folks from French Hill Manor are here now, but so I can resume the staff report later on.
Thank you, Melinda.
Sure. Let's just, I guess, let him. Yeah, so we received an application from the Champlain Housing Trust for, you know, who they manage the French Hill Manor is one of their properties. It's on Route 2. It's there's a bunch of mobile homes there, and there's an eroding ravine. So we recently received an application to stabilize the eroded ravine, and this is an administrative permit. It's not going to the DRB or anything like that, but you know, because it involves some wetlands and a steep slope, we thought it would be good just to kind of for the engineers to present what they're doing for your information. And then if you had any input into the permitting of it, you can definitely you know, chime in, or if you have questions. So with that, I'm going to let either Eric or Doug talk more about what it is they're proposing, and I'm going to put up the site plan there as a starting point and just let them explain.
Good morning. This is Eric Goddard from Knight Consulting Engineers. We did the analysis and design for the ravine stabilization at French Hill Manor. I don't know if Doug Hewitt from Summit Engineering has joined yet.
Yes.
Oh, he has. Okay. Their firm was involved with providing the survey and mapping the wetlands, and you know, they also provided some consultations with the state offices, wetlands offices during the permit process. So this plan we're looking at now is essentially an existing conditions plan. The next one is, I believe that's the wetlands impact plan. You can see there's a crosshatched area in the center of that kind of circular boundary. It's a little bit of a, yes, that boundary. That is the 50-foot buffer. The crosshatched area in the center of that is the actual wetland area. And we are providing access from the development right where it says proposed access into the wetland area so we can access the stabilization to the right, which is the downstream portion. If you look, there are 3 bump outs on the mobile home park side of the ravine, of the downstream portion. Those are the problem areas. The erosion has eaten its way into the slope and has created concern. You can see that there's one mobile home unit that's immediately above that, and then there's another one that's fairly close also, further, yes, up to the right. So the plan was to go in and we do have some small trees in the ravine that we were planning to cut. We're not planning to remove any stumps or anything like that, but we are planning to cut any small obstructions so we can work on the bottom of the ravine and essentially build up, restore those 3 eroded areas using, I believe it's dense graded crushed stone with geogrid, because it's a fairly steep slope. The existing slope is fairly steep. And then once we've built that, to basically create a stone lined swale downstream of the wetlands to help prevent further erosion, both on our client's property side and the neighbor's property side. And as far as the wetland protection in the wetland area, we have fabric and essentially a foot of a similar gravel material going down to protect the wetlands during the construction, and that will be removed from the wetland area. I think starting about 10 feet downstream of the wetland, we will be starting the stabilized channel, and that will be a permanent addition. So I had sent through an email just summarizing some of the things we were trying to do. We were trying to minimize earthwork in the area just because it's so tight, and minimize disturbance. So some of the bullet items we had were, we're not stumping any trees. We are cutting some small trees just to be able to maneuver the equipment through there. We're not excavating into the ground typically. We're building on top of the ground. Again, that's to minimize earthwork and disturbance. We're placing the temporary protection over the wetlands during the construction activity so they can move back and forth with materials. And we're stabilizing both sides of the ravine at the bottom. And we are impacting a relatively small area. I think it's about 6,800 square feet, including the access area. So I don't know if there's any questions with that description.
So what time of year were you planning to do this work?
I think they were, ideally it'd be summer, but they may start, we have recommended summertime, but I'm not sure if they will try to start late spring. I would have to touch base again with Chip at Champlain Housing Trust, but we advise them that summer, July, August would be the best time, because that should be the driest time of the year. So that he's aware of that concern, and I think he's on board with doing the work in the summer. They had considered doing it in the winter. We weren't wild about that. So I think they are planning to do a summer construction.
Why not winter?
I mean, I guess it could be done. I always feel like winter construction creates its own problems, with the cold weather and snow and things like that, of you know, you've got another variable in the construction activity. That's my professional feeling about it. So,
And will they?
especially with a tight site and dealing with steep slopes, you know, snow would, you know, could create problems.
Will they be replanting? If you're going to be cutting some trees, will they be replanting to try to stabilize that bank with
Well,
shrubs and evergreens?
The planned cutting was in the very bottom there. If you were to go in there, you'll see some small trees growing up right in the middle of the swale. We were planning to cut in the swale area and not up the slope. So at this point, we don't have a replanting plan. Everything that like I said, the swale is, we wouldn't want to be planting things in the swale. On the slope, we are using a structural material. It's got a fair amount of stone content. I don't know how well trees would grow in it. Right now, those areas are bare because it's basically been eroded and sloughed. So we weren't planting trees back in those repaired areas because we are using a crushed stony material. It's a dense grade, which is, it's about 25% soil and 75% stone, but it has a lot of structure to it. That's why we selected that material. So other than more of a topsoiling over the steeply eroded areas that we're patching, we're not doing any plantings per se.
Sorry to be so far behind on this, but I just don't picture where this development is. Melinda, I wonder if you could show it on a larger map, and also, are there only 3 mobile homes in the development?
No, these were the 3 that were close to the project. There is a small locator map in the upper right-hand corner of the plan you're on. I don't know if you can zoom in anymore on that, but
I think it's near Red Barn Farm and sort of near that old cemetery.
Do you know where Sunrise is, where the Sunrise development is?
Isn't it like right after Governor Chittenden, like the other end of Governor Chittenden?
Yeah.
It's up, it's,
Or no,
yeah,
it's
it's up,
yeah.
it's uphill. So it's Sunrise, there's the Nets.
There's Nets is right here.
Yeah, so
Governor
like
Chittenden.
if
If
you're
you go
driving
uphill-
into Williston, it's the, if you've just driven past Governor Chittenden on your right, it's the next right, correct?
No,
That's Nets.
Oh, that's
no,
next,
so there's,
okay.
so there's Nets, and then you keep going, and there's Sunrise Drive, and then you keep going, and then you get to
Yeah. And then
French Hill
Ah,
Manor.
got it.
it's right where the road starts to get steeper. I think just after this project,
Yeah.
a little bit starts to get a steeper grade.
And I can attest to the steep slopes back there as far as, I mean, that whole area has really steep slopes and ravines. That's where the Pine Ridge property is near. And, you know, so I know exactly what, and the other thing is, you know, I think Eric, I think it was either Eric or Doug suggested that if anybody wants to take a site visit and go to have a look at the site, that they would be welcome to, you know, come out with folks to do that.
I think Doug may have suggested that. I think either one of us would be willing, or we would both be there to walk through and answer questions.
Mhm.
You can kind of see firsthand what the existing conditions are, what we're dealing with. And then, you know, you can see the trees that we would be cutting in the very bottom of the swale.
You would be bringing all the material in through the wetlands. You wouldn't be working from up top where the mobile homes are.
No, it's you can see there's a lot of little shed buildings. There's not good access from the mobile home part side unless we actually move the mobile homes, you know, moved one of them. And then it's it's a steep grade down. So to work from the top, you know, it would be too far to reach down to do work at the bottom of the slope. So the plan is to bring everything through that, unfortunately, through the wetland area to get to down below. There's not really any good access to work it in the ravine, but
And what does the wetland consist of? Is it kind of like cattails and salamanders and, you know, things like that? Is there any rare plants down there that you know of?
no, I don't know if Doug's on. He's more up on this, but it's not I think it's more of a drier wetland as far as not standing water, but are you there, Doug?
Kind of a seasonal.
Yeah. My understanding is there's no rare plant species. You know, I've walked through it. There's just a little stream meandering through. The wetland area is kind of a flatter area at the upstream end. And I think it's a convergence of a few drainage outlets from the road in the neighborhood. And that may be creating a little bit of a wetter area. But I don't know if Doug is on.
I see his square, but oh, I am here and nobody hears me. That's what he says.
Okay.
It looks like he's not connected to the audio.
Okay.
Yeah. If he could, if he unmutes or connects.
He's not muted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Says you are. Huh.
Yeah.
Says I am on. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's having some audio issues, I guess.
Okay.
Laura, I don't have any comments or concerns at this point.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got another question here. This proposed access, it kind of looks to me on the map that it crosses the property line for an adjacent property. Is that a problem in any way?
We have an easement from, I'm trying to remember the name, to perform this work. The neighbor on the downhill side, the lower right.
Oh,
I think on the drawing, it has the name of the
Is
property
it-
owner. But there is an easement, which I think we sent a copy of to the town roughly a month ago. Of the easement between Champlain Housing Trust and that property owner, because more than half of the wetland, or roughly half of the wetland, is on their property. And we have to clip the corner of their property to get through to the repair area.
I think
So
it must be the Sunrise Association, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I thought.
No, it's
No.
it's actually one prior to that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's in between the two entrances.
George Levine. Says on the
Yeah.
plan.
That sounds right.
George
Levine.
Levine.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
are there any other concerns with the wetland ecologist who's been working with Doug? It looks like it's pretty straightforward. And by the way, that's a very nice neighborhood. I've gone up in there, you know, lots of little gardens and very peaceful.
Yeah, and so there's just a note from Doug that says he'd love to meet on site if anybody's interested. And then he also says the wetland is just a pocket that does not continue to where the work is going on. Oh, I can be there in an hour. So if anybody wants to go and meet him on site. Yeah,
Yeah, it looks like there isn't interest. I think we were probably fine with this proposal. What do we need to do, Melinda? Do we need to make a motion, or do we just let you know that we're okay with this moving forward?
yeah, this is just really informal. It's really just, you know, a referral from the zoning administrator. So you don't need to do anything. I'll just let him know that, you know, that you're okay with it as proposed.
Is that the general consensus?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Me
All
too.
right. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Doug and Eric, for presenting this.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone, I have to go get this little nugget ready for his day.
I'm going to Audubon.
He's going to
Ooh.
Audubon.
Oh,
Nice.
fun.
That sounds like fun.
Have fun. It's a nice warmer day.
Yeah, thank goodness. I was nervous at the beginning of the week. All right. See
Okay,
you all in
bye-bye,
a bit.
Jen.
Okay. Let's-
So we
chat,
can,
okay.
yeah, so we can move on to the significant wildlife habitat draft language.
Okay. So do I have that up here? Let me see. Close this out, close this out. There we go. Yeah. So this is the clean version. But I think it's pretty clear what the major additions are, and that is just this tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 habitat block and habitat connectors.
And then the corresponding sections about what can be done in those tiers.
Yes. I think last time, you know, I showed a presentation with some different scenarios, and I think at that time, the sentiment that I was hearing was that you kind of agreed with in concept the idea of having some flexibility and being able to exchange one area for another, but there was some question about whether it should be a one-to-one exchange and what should be required for restoration. And also there was the sentiment that a habitat disturbance assessment ought to be done by somebody that the town hires.
So I
So
like the way you phrased it as an engineering fee.
yeah,
And then
right.
the town would do the hiring.
Yeah, and I think that I could refine this language more and make it more explicit what is required there. I think what I have done is I said that the HDA has to be prepared by a qualified wildlife biologist or other professional contracted by the town. But I think that I do need to maybe add some more details about how that happens and that the applicant is responsible for the cost of that.
I had a question about the
assessment.
timing of the HDA as well,
Yeah,
which we had talked about the fact that, you know, paying a fee for an HDA at administrative permit is sometimes a deterrent for people who don't want to invest that much that early before they know whether the project can likely move forward.
you mean at pre-application?
Sorry, pre-application. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
a pre-application versus discretionary permit. And so what I was wondering is whether we could offer, and this is a question to the rest of the commission, could we offer that an HDA could be done either at pre-application or discretionary permit if they prefer not to complete it at the pre-application stage? Basically, they have to choose the risk that they'll go further down the process and hit a blocker versus doing the HDA right off the bat and paying the engineering fee.
I know there's probably a big difference in the cost for each parcel, but what is the average cost of an HDA? Like, is it $1,000 or is it $10,000?
It's closer to $1,000.
Okay, so it's not a really big investment for someone, who's going to be moving forward with a development. So it's not one of the major costs of development.
That's a good point, Terry. I did wonder about people who were, they want to build a detached garage and they want the location that they want to do it is far enough away from their structure that it would not be exempt from the SWHA rules. Would they, if they're going to spend $18,000 building a detached garage, would it be problematic for someone to pay $1,000 or $2,000 for the HDA at pre-application before are sure about other factors?
Well, I mean, I guess the other thing to consider here is that, it's sort of, there's an assumption that the pre-app is definitely going to move forward. And if it doesn't move forward, that's kind of a lot of money to spend for nothing. I mean, it's kind of rare that these don't move forward, but there are examples, pretty recent examples of where somebody submitted a pre-app that just didn't go anywhere, and then they withdrew it.
So I would think that if you were going to put a garage or something like that, a shed, that would be a pretty, I mean, I don't think that would be $1,000. I'm just trying to figure, in the scope of things.
It probably wouldn't even be required to do an SWHA in that case.
Right.
Because
So I guess I'm thinking, larger developments where, like the church that just, came on Mountain View Road, for them to spend $1,000 or $2,000, comparing it to the size of the development, that's a small fee. And it might save them money down the road, having to go back to the drawing board.
I'm hearing
Right.
Eric's words echoing in my head that we want the HDA as early as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Reed. I think for our purposes in decision making or advisory recommending, I think that is true. The more information that we have at the start of the process, the better our advice and advice back to the developer can be, and recommendations to the PRB will be. I guess, and looking through the bylaw here, the language in the bylaw, it seems to me that the situations where this will come up will be those larger projects that Terry was just describing, and presumably those larger projects will have larger budgets behind them and are going to be more likely to move forward. Melinda, I understand that there are some pre-app or projects that did not survive the pre-app phase, but are those generally the larger projects that would be larger projects that this new bylaw or language in the bylaw would apply to?
Yeah, so those, the larger projects, tend to be put forth by developers who are more experienced in navigating through our bylaws. And so you're right in that respect, that, you
So-
know, for those projects, it wouldn't be a major cost to have this done early on.
And I
Yeah.
guess my one very minor concern with this approach would be, we could be creating more process for ourselves and potential inexperienced applicants, in that they may see this and want to just have a consultation conversation either with you, Melinda, or with the Conservation Commission first, before even starting the formal pre-app phase.
Mhm.
Hard to know how often, if that'll happen, or how often it might happen, but it's just, you know, something that we may create inadvertently. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's just more work for us.
Yeah, we don't
mean-
get to see those early conversations. Melinda, how likely is it that you wouldn't be able to advise someone who's thinking about submitting a pre-app?
Well, yeah, I mean, usually what happens is, especially for the larger projects, is before you even see anything from them, or before they submit a pre-app, they're talking to staff about their project and getting advice from us about what we think will be needed, you know, what they'll need to provide, et cetera. So it really doesn't create any more work for us. And, you know, I think process-wise, I'll probably need to check in with, you know, with Matt to see how like viable a path this is. But I mean, it certainly makes sense to me to have it be something that occurs, you know, earlier on in the process rather than later.
So just to take, for example, the latest church development. So the town staff had seen the layout, the plan, the things, and you advise those folks
Yeah.
a little bit before they started. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And how would you implement this, Melinda? Would you just provide them with, point them to the SWHA map and say, you know, you should be aware of these areas and the mapping, because, you know, 27.5 is going to address rules
Yeah.
about these areas, and then let them read it and ask any questions they have?
Well, I mean, yeah, generally, like if I know that their projects is going to require habitat disturbance assessment, I'll just come forward and say that right away. You know, like, you're in significant wildlife habitat, you're going to need to provide this. And, you know, I mean, as it is now, we say, you know, you need to provide this, but you don't need to provide it at pre-app. You'll need to provide it at discretionary permit, but that, you know, if that changes, that'll be, yeah, different.
Okay.
I would tell them they need to provide it at pre-app and before meeting with the commission. And that it would inform the commission's recommendations. The results of that would inform your recommendations.
Yeah, I agree also with it being earlier rather than later.
Mhm.
Yeah, you guys answered my question. Sounds like we're not concerned that it would hold people up, and we are in agreement that it should be as early as possible, which would be pre-app.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only caveat to that is that depending on what time of year it is, there are certain things that you can see better in the winter, in the summer than you can in the winter, and vice versa, I guess. You know, in the winter time, you know, obviously if there's snow, you can look for tracks. In the summertime, you can actually do a survey for birds, whereas you're not really going to be able to do that during the winter for breeding birds. And also, you know, if there are wetlands for amphibians and wetland species, et cetera. So, you know, season is going to have some impact on what you get out of that HDA, but not to say that they haven't been done in the winter time. They've been done in all seasons. So just something to keep in mind.
typically when are these type of projects proposed? Is it anytime during the year?
Anytime.
Okay.
Yeah, anytime. I mean, we'll tend to get more residential pre-apps coming, late summer and fall because the deadline is the end of the calendar year. But that being said, we can get them at any time.
Melinda, would it be okay to take a look at your PowerPoint presentation? I think the last slide had the stated summary of objectives for the revision. Yeah,
Oh,
this
yeah.
one.
Okay.
I thought
Yeah.
this might be a good, just to check the boxes to see whether we feel as though the drafted language addressed these primary
Mhm.
changes.
Yeah.
So definitely there was language in there saying to avoid development in tier 1 and minimize impacts in tier 2. That was explicit.
Mhm.
I had one question on the definition for the tier 1
Mhm.
and 27.5.2.1.
Hold on.
The other two tiers, tier 2 and tier 3, have an acreage number assigned to them. And this one, we just have a reference to land area, which I think is fine, but it could be, I'm just wondering if that's intentional to not include an acreage. for
Oh,
tier
I
one.
see. Yeah, I don't I don't think that was intentional. Yeah, so tier 1 would also be, I think all of the, wait a minute.
It seemed as though it was intentional to say that tier 1, no matter how small the impacted area, oh no, this was about defining, never mind, this is about defining the blocks, not about impacts, sorry.
And I
Yeah,
think that's, I guess I can go either way, but I feel like it's okay to not have an acreage assigned, because if it's tier 1
mhm.
is that is supporting something that is very important, some rare species or endangered species. But if that species is just is a small plant that doesn't require 30 acres of land, it requires that micro niche to be protected, then maybe we don't need 20 acres around it. Maybe we just need like 1 acre.
Yeah,
That's
I
an
think-
extreme example. But
well, maybe we ought to take this acreage out of the tier 2 definition is what I'm thinking. I'm not sure this was intentional on my
Well, and I'm
part.
wondering whether there was a carryover from Jens's criteria when he was doing the mapping,
Yeah,
which we could reference it here, but I don't think we need to. The map, basically,
Yeah.
it's mapped area that has these characteristics.
yeah, and I think he ended up basically just including the blocks that are greater than 20 acres in the final map of SWHA. And I think that was intentional, just to sort of eliminate the smaller areas. But perhaps that doesn't need to be mentioned here in the definition.
well, I'm not sure. That's why I brought it up. And I guess I just, when I first read through it, I was just a little confused because there's no number of acres assigned to tier 1, but there is for tier 2, but tier 1 is more relaxed in protection than tier 1.
Yeah, I don't think that was intentional on my part to, I think that was just a mistake. So, yeah. Tier 2. I mean, you could just take the greater than 20 acres blocks that support wildlife but are less important than tier 1 blocks.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
It also prevents us from needing to change it in the future if we remap the areas. It just says areas mapped as tier 1 have these characteristics regardless of what other variables were taken into consideration when mapping it.
Mhm. By the way, Jens said he would review this language as well. I'd sent it on to him, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and he said he would have a look at it too and comment.
That was going to be my main suggestion. You took it from me, Melinda. All right.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Melinda.
It
Mhm.
seems like we're far enough along. We're ready for him to look at it and see whether he feels like it will be effective at implementing what he was trying to coach us through.
Yeah.
There was one other minor thing, and I do think it's minor, but there were a couple
Mhm.
places where there was sort of like a purpose statement about why the rules were the way they were, and I'm not able to remember the exact section right now, but there was a section where it seemed as though we should be saying not just, it mentioned protecting wildlife, but it didn't mention that it's also about protecting wildlife for the benefit of the people of Williston. Does anybody remember what section talked about this? Maybe it was 2755, the purpose of protecting SWHA. Yeah, I think that might be it.
Oh, okay.
That top level paragraph 2755. It seems like it should also say for the enjoyment and benefit of the residents of Williston.
Mhm.
Because what's written there speaks to me, because I'm all about the intrinsic value of nature, but I think it would speak to more people if we mentioned that it's also for the enjoyment and benefit of people.
Mhm.
You know, if you like seeing bobcat, you're not going to see bobcat if we don't protect these areas, basically, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I just had one more thing. And this is a really small thing, but I know that when we had talked about with Jens, or we had read something about wording and how to word phrases, the word shall is one of those words that they prefer to be replaced with must. And I think it might be a pain to go through and just change all the shalls to must. And I think shall does the same thing. So I just wanted to mention it in case anybody had a thought about that.
It's not that much of a pain. You just use find and replace.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Yeah,
But
I guess it's stronger wording to use must than shall, but in my mind, shall also does the same thing.
Yeah, shall is better than should.
yeah.
Correct.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember him saying that too.
Mhm.
One of the areas that seemed the least buttoned up to me was kind of what the trade-offs or alternatives are if impacts can't be completely avoided. And so if we could take a look, yeah, this section about relief.
Yeah. And I think I pull out tier 1 here because I think the intention with these new rules is to really have the tier 1 SWHA be an area to avoid where it is at all possible to avoid. Whereas in the previous and in the current regulations, SWHA there's not really an intention to avoid so much as the intention is to minimize. Yeah. So this calls out tier 1 and just says, if you have a parcel that's virtually entirely covered by tier 1 habitat, will allow you to build there if it's not possible to avoid. Yeah, but you have to configure your development so that you're really minimizing impacts. Like you can't put something in the middle of a tier 1 block. You have to really put it on the edge. If there is an opportunity to avoid, like if your parcel has some land that's not covered by tier 1 SWHA, you have to put your development there. You can't go into the tier 1 if there is an opportunity to be outside of it.
Do
And
we need to
then,
say that purpose somewhere in here? Do we need to
Well-
say that one of the main goals of the SWHA bylaw is to place the highest emphasis on tier 1, or is that implied in the structure?
perhaps it could be in the, let's see. I mean, so it sort of says it here, I think, in the standards, where it says avoid encroachments,
Yeah,
and it says minimize encroachments. Oh, and then the one thing that back to this section, I think I did not articulate is, so if your parcel has 25% of it is lacking significant wildlife habitat, you really need to build in that 25%. But if you're sort of in this area where, between over 75%, but, you're sort of between, you have a little bit of room, but it's not really practical, there is an opportunity to trade off, to redesignate. If you're going to build in tier 1 SWHA, then you have to set aside another area of equal area. I think where there was some question last time is whether it needs to be a greater area of replacement. Here it says the redesignated tier 1 SWHA has to be contiguous to existing SWHA, has to be restored, be able to function as wildlife habitat within 5 years. And then the open space has to include this restored area. But should it be a 1-to-1 trade-off, or should it be a greater area? Should it be, say, a 1.25, should there be an additional like 0.25% or 25% area added to that to compensate for the fact that it's not going to be the same as an already established forest? It's going to take years and years to get to the point where it functions like an existing forest.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Is there any way we can word it so that, since we don't know we can't really envision all the possible ways this could be used, that that we could require that, or I'm not sure what's better because I think it's, probably better to have a standard that people can't wiggle around also.
Yeah,
e-
and it says an equal or greater amount. I mean, yeah, so the question is, do you want to establish a definite standard for all developments, knowing that each one is going to be a little bit different? There may be circumstances where it's warranted and other circumstances where it's not. Yeah, that's a good question.
Anyone else have input? Do you think equal or greater amount is okay? And then the Conservation Commission could say, well, you're cutting down some, 150-year-old trees. You're gonna have to, take, double that if you're gonna, or
Yeah,
something.
it seems like a time that we would want to do a site visit. If somebody's going to need to impact an SWHA and wants to trade different areas, I feel like that's a time that we would want to actually go in person and see the areas firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, I can rework that language. What I'm hearing is maybe include something about a site visit will be required for any exchanges of land, or
Yeah,
this may require a site visit, or the Conservation
Yeah.
Commission
I would
may
put
do a
something
site
like,
visit.
yeah, that a site visit may be required, and that the Conservation Commission may require an offset of greater acreage than the impacted area. Basically giving us the license to say, no, 1-to-1 is not equal in this case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that language, Reed.
Maybe at this point, you might want to get someone involved. I don't know if, like, I'm just using this examples, Ethan or someone who has experience with this. And are there other towns that have this in their bylaws? Is that?
well, so South Burlington is going through the process right now of the hearing process for their bylaws, and they have sort of a similar language in theirs where they're proposing exchanges of habitat blocks. And I actually think that the language is very confusing. And I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, as clear and simple. But yeah, they would be an example. And they're the only ones I know of, the only town I know of that is using this this habitat exchange restoration option.
And would we, as Conservation Commission members, or be making the decision on 1-to-1, 2-to-1, how much has to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, the Conservation Commission as advisory board would be making recommendations, and it would be the DRB's decision about the actual a requirement would be a DRB decision. But
If
they
someone,
usually rely on your recommendations. Yeah.
Terry, if someone came to us, let's say a year from now, and this language is in place, and they wanted to build in a location that was going to impact, let's say, tier 1 SWHA, and their parcel was heavily constrained by SWHA tier 1, the first thing I would say is we need a site visit, and we should invite some sort of expert to help us make a good judgment about whether a trade-off is appropriate.
Right. And that's what I was trying to figure, where was there?
But whether that needs to be in here in writing, that's another question, but that's the first thing that I would say.
Mhm.
Because I don't think I'd be qualified to say, oh, you need to
Yeah.
plant twice as many trees over here as over here. I don't have a forestry background or anything.
I mean, so one thing that you might want to, one thing that could take care of that is if, you know, the habitat disturbance assessment is done, the town is hiring the biologist to do the habitat disturbance assessment, the town could ask them to specifically comment on the proposed exchange of land and whether it meets the standards.
That's a great idea. Can we put that language in there? That way we won't forget it.
Yeah, I mean, what I can do is I can put it
You
where,
could put in the HDA description of what it may
Yeah.
include.
yeah,
You could even say it may include a request to attend a site visit with the commission
Yep.
for follow-up, such as to review offset restoration work.
yeah. Okay, Eric asked a question about PUD, planned unit
Yes.
development,
Oh, PUD, what does that stand for?
planned unit development, or planned PRDs, planned residential development. So that would be, and you're right, I don't think that, I'm not sure we do have a definition in our bylaw, but
That
A
was at the
PUD,
very bottom.
yeah, a
Yeah.
PUD is basically like, so
oops,
the condo that I own it's not actually a condo, it's a planned unit
PUD, okay.
development. So it's like condos essentially, but they are treated more like residential housing.
Well, maybe I could just use the term subdivision or development, you know.
Yep,
Just, yeah,
That sounds reasonable, rather than introducing a new term. And I guess that gets to one of my other comments, which was to, particularly in this section that's on the screen now, is to try and use consistent terminology throughout the bylaw. So like, for example, in 14.1 of the screen, we have where possible, development must be located. And then the next one down, where avoidance of development within tier 1 is not practicable. Is that intentional, or is that just a different use of a similar term?
I think it's a different standard. I mean, I see possible, meaning like, it may not be where you want to put it, but if it's possible, you got to put it there.
Yeah, can it be located there? Yes or no, versus is it reasonable
want
or is
to?
it
Yeah, or
practicable
is
to
it-
put it there?
Right.
That makes sense. And then the other question I had when I saw it before is relocate. I'm not a big fan of that term in this context, just because it sounds like we're asking, implying that habitat that's going to be developed could be just picked up and moved somewhere else on a property. I don't have a good alternative word, but it's not.
It's like
said
offset.
well.
Is offset maybe a better term for that?
Yeah, I think.
An
but-
offset or a mitigation.
Or just take relocate out of there, just must redesignate an equal or greater amount to offset the amount that's being lost to development or something like that.
Yeah, that would work. I don't know about redesignate though. I think they're just designating.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Well, I feel like we're making progress on this. I know it's been slow, but I feel
have
like
a-
now it's starting to come together.
I have another question, Melinda, and it's not necessarily about the language of SWHA here. It's more about the related topics. I know we've talked about taking a look at like how to facilitate transfer of development rights and where development rights could be transferred to in the
Yeah.
future.
Mm.
I was just reading up on the ERF, I guess the statute that governs environmental reserve funds at the state level, and it looks as though the ERF is a legitimate resource for purchasing rights and easements to conserve land.
Yeah.
So it seems like the ERF, it's nice that we already have something established that could be used for that purpose rather than outright purchasing the land. It could just be purchasing the development rights.
Yeah,
was
and in
wondering
fact, it
what-
has been before. It has been
Yeah.
used many
Yeah.
times, yeah.
And so I was just wondering whether you think there are other topics that would need to be addressed at the same time as revising the SWHA language in the bylaw, or whether you think it could stand alone, that we could update SWHA and then turn our attention to other tools for the Conservation Commission to conserve town resources at a later date.
I mean, I think that you're right that the transfer development rights tool does sort of go hand in hand with this. I think this could stand alone as a revision, but I think it would be stronger if the transfer development rights could be strengthened. And I think, we were sort of moving on, moving in the right direction with that before we picked this up. One thing that's going to complicate things a little bit is that in the growth center, there's likely to be no density limits. And so that then
Takes away our
it takes away that.
Yeah.
However, that takes away that as a sending area, or as a receiving area rather. But it could be replaced by other receiving areas, like, for example, maybe the RZD or parts of it could be receiving area rather than the growth center. You could have a density bonus for maybe certain parts of the RZD, or yeah, I don't know.
I guess the next time we discuss this, one, we're going to get Jens's input, so that's great.
Yeah.
But as I think about the next steps, this is going to eventually be up for public comment, right? There's going to be
Oh yeah.
a public hearing for the bylaw change. And if I live in an area, if I own land that is now mapped as a SWHA tier 1 at the very least, if I attend that public hearing, I think it's a very different feel if there has been more thought put into how those who are impacted by this change can still benefit from their land. So I think I would like to see us put a little bit more thought into that before we get to the stage where the public is weighing in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In that same vein, I think, sorry, I just navigated away from my screen. On 27.6, in the uncommon, rare, threatened, endangered species and communities, Wanda, I think it'd be good to flag this to Jens and ask him if he thinks it would be important to identify or include species of greatest conservation need as well in here. Species, and those are identified in Vermont's Wildlife Action Plan. And it includes, I think, Jens can confirm, but I think it includes all of these uncommon, rare, threatened, and endangered species, but it also includes species that may not be any of those things, but are identified by the state as priority species for restoration or conservation. And unfortunately, I don't have a good example that applies here, but in my day job world, that includes lake trout and brook trout, which are
What was the name of that again, Eric?
SGCN, species of greatest conservation need.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, it includes all of these rare, threatened, endangered species, but also species that are identified for enhanced or continued restoration. That may include some birds, and I just don't know what birds will want to pick one out of the list that may not be already identified as rare, threatened, or endangered. But in the fish world, that includes brook trout and lake trout.
Mhm.
Yeah, blue spotted salamander, four-toed salamander. Yeah, there's a whole list out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely run that past Jens.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Didn't even know that existed. Thanks for bringing that up.
I guess my question to you all, talking about next steps, is when do you think would be a good time to sort of put this mapping out into the the world for public input? I made that story map that just sort of, gives the public an opportunity to look at the map and submit comments, and gives a little bit of background on why we're, what it is we've done, why we're revisiting this, etc. So, if you think that now might be a good time to kind of put that out there, we can do that. Or if you'd rather wait until the draft language is really buttoned up, we can also do that.
I think my only concerns before the public sees this is working on the information about, what if my land is impacted by these changes?
Mhm.
I'm looking at the story map now, and it covers a changing landscape, previous efforts to preserve habitat, reevaluating the SWHA, and what the new map looks like. And then it has the section on amending SWHA and what the goal of amending it is. And a summary of the revisions, which looks like it might want to be just updated a little bit based on everything we've discussed here. And then it shows the actual map and talks about next steps. And I think I would like to see a section that already addresses basically saying what if my land contains SWHA
Mhm.
question mark, and then here are ways in which the town is addressing or is thinking about the
Mhm.
impacts to landowners,
Mhm.
rather than having it just be a void and having them go, wait, so has the town even thought about what this means for us?
Mhm. Yeah. I can add that.
It'll be interesting to see what Jens comes back with after he reviews this, but that is a good point. A lot of folks are going to be looking at this map and saying, hey, wow, my land is on here and this was my retirement fund. And I'm sure Jens, they must have some kind of language in there. I mean, that must be a question that has popped up in other towns.
Yeah, and I mean, initially, when the SWHA was created in Williston, several years ago, there were public meetings and there were questions raised by property owners, so it's sort of like, you sort of already have gone through that. This takes it up a notch. But
This is much more restrictive. I mean, the previous regulation said that, please try not to impact SWHA, basically. which this is a different tone.
Yeah,
And there was, when the CRG group were trying to look for the, percentage of open land in the, what's that zone called again? I always forget.
RZD.
RZD.
Yeah, RZD. There were a lot of landowners that were quite upset. That were say, wait a minute, this is where I'm going to develop, and this is where I need to develop. So that needs to be thought about too.
Yeah, I think the more solid we are on our language and our reasoning and our next steps, the better for introducing this to the public. So it will be great to get, Jens's input, and then work more on how we can address next steps and introducing the public to this.
Should we also consider having a joint session with the planning commission to talk about it before it's released for public review,
Oh,
or after, or how do you recommend we navigate that?
well, there definitely will be a session with the planning commission at some point. This will be introduced to the planning commission. I guess, whether you think that should happen before or after. I mean, probably the one question they're going to ask, I would think, would be, have you done any public outreach? So
Okay,
my
yep.
sense is that you might want to do some public outreach before the planning commission sees this.
Is there any way to get some input from the planning commission or the rest of the staff about the potential for adapting transfer development rights, given that the Taft Corners zoning is no longer going to be an option for a receiving zone?
I can certainly talk with it more with Matt. We've had some discussion about, how to be able to continue to use that. But I can discuss it a little bit more, or I can also perhaps have Matt come to a Conservation Commission meeting and discuss it with you all. Whatever you think is, would be most useful.
I think it would be, I don't know, I guess I would, maybe having Matt come and discuss this with us would be a good halfway point. I was kind of thinking that it might be useful for us to review this with the planning commission before we go to the public with it, just to make sure there are no, there's nothing in here that they don't have significant concerns about that we would need to change or even remove before we go to the public. I'd hate to go to the public and then take something to the planning commission that the planning commission just says, no, it's not going to happen. I'd rather do that before we go to the public.
Do you think
Yeah.
Matt would be a halfway point that he could represent the planning commission's views at a high level, Eric?
I would ask Melinda that question. I don't know.
I mean, I think that it's really fine if, you can talk to Matt about transfer development rights and how that could still be used, have an initial conversation with him. You can also take a draft of the language to the planning commission, have an initial discussion at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen because they're
busy.
they've got a bunch of stuff that they're trying to work through right now, but at some point take this to the planning commission and then do a public outreach piece. You can do it in whatever order you think makes sense. I think the planning I wouldn't say that Matt could represent the views of the planning commission. I think that if you want to discuss,
I guess I meant more like anticipate red flags that the planning
Yeah.
commission might raise. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think you are I think you are anticipating those. They will raise issues about, you know, property rights and so forth. I mean, that's going to come up.
Melinda, was that talked about in form-based code about losing the opportunity to use transfer development rights to the growth center? Was that?
Well,
considered that was a tool taken away?
It's not, you know, it's sort of ancillary to the form-based code that, you know, the density stuff is more in our bylaw. Yeah, I mean, certainly we've talked about that. But the main point is that, you know, I think that the justification for not having limits on density in the growth center is that we want to make it easy for people to develop there. That's where we want people to develop. We don't want to make it hard. We don't want to, you know, yeah, we don't want to make it harder. We want to make it easier. We want to encourage development in that area of town.
It's not really protecting the ARZD, but it's just.
Well, it
hoping that
is.
People will, I mean, but there's no like, okay, we're going to develop here, so we're going to put aside a chunk of money to the ERF to pay for development, you know, so there's no like monetary trade-off.
Is
there?
No, but there's always a risk if you put impediments, if you make people pay money to develop, to increase their density in the growth center, that they, you know, that they will, there'll be less incentive to do so. Whereas if you encourage them, more development in the growth center, you are actually protecting land in the ARZD by doing that.
So thank you, Melinda. Thanks, Terry, for those questions. We're almost at 9 o'clock. So it looks like we have an idea of how we want to move forward with this. So is there anything else before we go to the last thing of the staff report?
Is the upshot of all that we're going to hear from Jens, and we're going to Melinda's going to talk with Matt? Is that?
That's what I assumed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will wait to hear back from Jens. I don't know what his workload is like right now and how soon he'll be able to look at this stuff. He said he would. I'll also look at adding the content that you suggested to the story map, and making the changes that you suggested to the draft language. Talking to Matt about my understanding is you want him to come to a conservation commission to discuss the TER stuff, or you just want me to talk to him about it?
I would leave it up to you guys to decide. If you have an initial conversation and he feels like, yeah, I should come and talk to him about it because it's bigger than a bread box.
Yeah.
Then,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I can do that. Okay. So you feel like you're set on that topic for now, or?
Yeah, I think we are. Eric, is that okay? That decision with you about?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So let's go on to the town hall field kiosk and nature trail.
Yeah, so I guess my question to you is that we have some money in planning and engineering, I think it's about $2,000 of planning and engineering funds in our operating budget. And I had a thought that perhaps some of that money could be used to actually get a wetland permit to do what we're doing with the town hall fields and having the nature trail there. We actually do have a kiosk that has been built and is waiting for content on it. And we, last summer we did mow a trail around, we sort of mowed an illicit trail through the wetland. And so my question is it worth spending some money? I think it would be, I got like a rough estimate from Fitzgerald that he thought it would be, maybe $500, $600 to for them to go, to submit an application and go through the wetland permitting process to get a wetland permit for what we're doing back there. So I guess that
For a
would be
permanent
my
trail.
question to you. Do you want to spend some money to do that?
How many folks use that trail back there? Do folks know about it?
Well, not
It's not
really.
advertised.
No, it's not advertised right now because we don't have a permit to do what we're doing back there. So,
And would you have to put in some boardwalk and punch-ins and things like that?
you may have to do that over portions of the trail, but not very much of it, I don't think.
We have a few hundred buckthorn that have been cut and are ready to be laid as corduroy. So there's work to be done, but it seems like we've had at least one just kind of volunteer work day out there. And I think if we had some more volunteer activities, which Chapin is willing to organize and lead, I think, some of the areas that are a little bit wet could be managed just by laying down invasive tree trunks as corduroy.
Yeah, it sounds like with all the work that's been done and the interest in it, that it makes sense to get the wetland permit.
Mhm.
Yeah, the kiosk is ready to be utilized.
Yeah,
Mhm.
does everyone agree with that?
And so after that, it could be advertised more a little bit after this permit was secured? Is that
Well,
the idea?
The idea is, we wouldn't feel like we were doing something illegal, and we could, it could be legitimized and more broadly promoted as a resource. I mean, I do think that, I know Chapin has put a lot of work into just creating a resource back there that's educational and informative, and it's also a nice place to go for a short walk.
I'm thinking about the school, the central school. They already use the Allenbrook Nature Trail, but it's a completely
Mhm.
different sort of habitat, and it's within walking distance for classes to go across and do a nature walk in the field behind the town hall. So I would like to see it used as an educational resource in addition to residents utilizing it.
Yeah,
And this-
so,
Okay.
sorry, to be able to use that, we would need to, $500 or $600 isn't that much to get the wetland permit. So I think I would just like to have everyone who agrees with this to say aye.
Aye,
Aye.
an
Is there
informal
anyone-
vote.
Yeah, it's an informal vote, but I just wanted to get an idea of what people thought about it. Anyone who is opposed to that?
Eric's left already, but I don't think
Okay.
he would be opposed to it.
Okay, so it sounds like that's the question. We should go ahead with that.
Yeah.
So,
And just
Thanks
a
for keeping us on
question.
track, Laura.
Yeah, just a question. Was this supposed to connect to the other trail that was kind of going over to that Whittemore Hill or something?
Whitney Hill. At one point, we did explore a possible connection, but I don't think it's really feasible to have a connection. It's too wet.
mm,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really wet in there. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
okay, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to adjourn this meeting and Happy New Year. Hope you had a great holiday, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
thank you.